say you wanna watch a drama. You say you wanna watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama, or you can watch it with your daddy.
You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler, so you can come and talk around a water cooler. We're watching all day and all night.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa. Couch potatoes unite.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! ! Which is based on a blog of the same name because it's our royal court, of sorts, and we'll rule it as we see fit. Hey, that's how they talk on this show, quite a bit. Hey, that even rhymed. My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground with something you like. For Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU, ! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the blog or the podcast via iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and via Google Play to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including but not limited to iZombie, The X-Files, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., New Girl, The Originals, The Crown, Once Upon a Time, Orange is the New Black, 13 Reasons Why, A Series of Unfortunate Events, Fuller House, Westworld, American Horror Story, and Grace and Frankie. We've published several episodes in our Looking Back series covering such diverse shows as Friends, Sense8, Battle Creek, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, and Marvel's Agent Carter. Plus, new episodes are in the works, including revisits for Doctor Who, Gotham, Schitt's Creek, Arrested Development, Game of Thrones, Supernatural, Will and Grace, Stranger Things. The Marvel's Defenders panel will talk Season 2 of The Punisher. The DCTU will revisit all 4 shows in the CW's Arrowverse, and the Star Trek 50 Plus series will talk Season 3 of the original series. We'll be launching new panels covering Jane the Virgin, The Americans, Riverdale, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Altered Carbon, Mr. Robot, and Charmed. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll take a smallish look back at a short-term show from some kind of yesteryear called Freaks and Geeks, and we'll revisit one of the all-time and most-watched classic sitcoms, MASH, which actually had a lot of requesters, so the thing never dies. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers and comedy shows and Comic-Cons, and we just went live from Blue Bridge Games to take a shiny look back at Firefly. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff. So make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to the blog, our YouTube channel, our iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Play. In the meantime, if you don't hear a show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we always seek new panelists. So if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of those outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback. Just keep your executioners at bay. Beheading is so passé. Today's panel is looking back at an American historical romance and dramatic television series that aired on the CW for 4 seasons from 2013 to 2017. If you aren't already aware, from time to time, CPU will be choosing shows of all types, but usually of some fame or notoriety to reminisce about, and to consider whether or not they age gracefully like Mary, Queen of Scots, when Queen of France, or don't hold up as well like Mary, Queen of Scots, when Queen of Scotland only. As such, this is another chapter of our Looking Back podcast episodes wherein we review a show that has been gone, either via natural end or cancellation for some time, and today, that show is Reign. Reign was created by Stephanie Sengupta and Laurie McCarthy and premiered on October 17, 2013 on the CW, as well as concluded after 4 seasons on June 16, 2017. The highly fictionalized series follows the early exploits of Mary, Queen of Scots, played by Adelaide Kane. The first season opens in 1557, when Mary is living in a convent in France, but she is quickly returned to the castle, where we learn she is awaiting her marriage to Prince Francis, played by Tony Regbo, to whom she has been engaged since they were 6. Mary has to contend with changing politics and power plays, as well as her burgeoning feelings for Francis and the romantic attentions of Francis's bastard half-brother, Sebastian or Bache de Poitiers, played by Torrance Coombs. Francis's mother, Catherine de Medici, played by Megan Follows, secretly tries to prevent the marriage following Nostradamus' confidential prediction that the marriage will lead to Francis's death. The series also follows the affairs of Mary's Scottish handmaidens, Kenna, played by Caitlin Stacey, Ailey, played by Janessa Grant, Lola, played by Anna Popplewell, and Greer, played by Selena Sinden, who are searching for husbands of their own at French court. The second season opens after the death of King Henry II, played by Alan Van Strang, and follows the rise of Francis and Mary as King and Queen of France and Scotland. Together, they have to balance their marriage with their roles as monarchs and deal with the rising religious conflict between Catholics and Protestants, as well as the ambitions of the rival House of Bourbon for the throne of France. The third season follows Francis's declining health and his death partway through the season, leaving Mary a widow and struggling to find new footing since she's no longer bound to France as its queen. Francis's brother Charles, played by Spencer McPherson, is crowned the new underage king with Catherine as regent. The third season also introduces the court of Queen Elizabeth of England, played by Rachel Scarston, who plots against Mary, fends off marital prospects, and deals with her secret love affair with Robert Dudley, played by Charlie Carrick. The fourth and final season has Mary return to Scotland and trying to regain power in her homeland. She has to manage her allies, such as her bastard half-brother James, played by Dan Jeannotte, and the outspoken Lord Bothwell, as well as her enemies, such as the Protestant preacher John Knox, played by Jonathan Goad. Tensions mount between Mary and Elizabeth, with Mary marrying Lord Darnley, played by Will Kemp, an English Catholic claimant to the English throne, in the hopes of taking England. In France, Catherine has to protect her son, King Charles IX, from the ambitions of her daughter, Queen Liza of Spain, and her younger son, Henry. Response to the show was mixed at the time, with various critics highlighting the show's focus on romance and teenage drama instead of historical accuracy. A number of reviewers compared it to Gossip Girl, with similar emphasis on fashion, drama, and soap opera antics, while others dubbed it The Tudors for Teens, though of course the focus is on the beginnings of the Stuart dynasty, not solely on the Tudors. Yet the show's popularity among its small but vocal fan base saved the show from cancellation for its final and fourth season. 2, the show was the subject of some steady internet water cooler discussion, particularly during airing schedules that started later in the fall to spring viewing period. CPU has covered this show on the blog periodically in the past and has attempted to recruit podcasters for the show previously when the show was current, but only recently did some interest descend to our particular throne room just this past year when our new panel, consisting of 1 familiar CPU voice and 2 brand new voices, along with your very involved moderator, shared some preliminary thoughts about this series and decided to convene around the water cooler to reminisce about Reign in one of our Looking Back episodes, during which we will talk about the finer and less fine points of the series in general. As always, it should be noted that all of our panelists have viewed the entire series and may discuss sensitive plot points, though some of it is history. So for those of you who have not watched Reign, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. At this time, I'd like to introduce the panel, and since some of you are new and some of you are not so new, I will remind you and our not so new listeners how this works, and then inform the new people how this works. What I'll do is ask you to identify yourself by your first name, just your first name. Don't tell us your whole life story. And then tell us how you came to watch Reign. What made you start watching? How did you find out about it? What kept you watching? Did you watch the whole thing? Because we're looking back, and that's very important. And then you get to rate your interest in the show. And we do this along the CPU's standard character question, which changes with each show we do. And because this is a looking back episode, you get to answer according to a character how you felt at the beginning and then how you felt at the end. So how would you rate yourself in this character question when you started watching Reign, your interest, and then by the time the finale aired, where did your interest finally lie? Sound good? They're all looking at you. Can be vocal. We're on a podcast.
Yeah.
All right, good job. Yay, because they can't see you nodding. But that's okay. We're got the hang of it. So how would you rate your interest in Reign? And I will read it as follows. And also, just a little bit of a disclaimer. There are a million main characters in this main cast. I tried to group them as much as I could. You're just going to have to bear with us. Okay, how did you feel about Reign at the beginning and the end? Did you love it? You love Mary, Queen of Scots, the whole Tudor-Stuart dynasty of British history, the whole Renaissance era, and Adelaide Kane's particular portrayal of this embattled queen. Some part of you wants to be Mary, Queen of Scots without all of the attempts on her life, like Mary Stuart, also known as Mary, Queen of Scots. Did you enjoy the show, but your favorite part was the political pieces, the historical depictions, and how power, marriage and church politics influenced the governing of nations. You had a complicated affection for the Mary character and an especial interest in the workings of Catherine de' Medici, who wielded power over kings like no other queen, mother, or regent in history, like Catherine de' Medici. Did you watch Reign because though you only tolerated the soapy quality of politics at court and who was betting whom, it was the mystical aspects introduced to the show that intrigued you? Also, you found the main character, Mary Queen of Scots, especially winning, like Sebastian or Bash de Poitiers. Did you watch Reign because your friends watched it? You would discuss it with your friends at length and with much fastidious analysis. In fact, you would feel very alone watching the show without your friends, like Lady Greer of Kinross, Lady Lola, Lady Kenna, or Lady Ailey. Did you watch Reign to see how the upper crust lived in those robustly complicated political times? You sympathized with how their happiness and comfort were pawns for political chess, even as they seemed to have the finest things life could offer, like Princess Claude of France. Did you watch Reign to see how the other half lived in those robustly complicated political times, and or because you thought several members of the ensemble cast were dreamy, like Leif Bayard? Did you idealize and adore the romance of the show, perhaps more than the political discussions of each episode, and you were most invested in Mary's relationship to King Francis, Dauphin of France? Thus, you probably liked the first 2 seasons better than the last 2, like King Francis II, Dauphin of France. Did you idealize and adore the historical depictions of this show, perhaps more than the romance and sexual politics of each episode? And you were most invested in the appearance of Elizabeth I, Mary's historical chief rival, and how that rivalry came to end. Thus, you probably liked the second 2 seasons better than the first 2, like Queen Elizabeth I of England. At times, you felt bewildered by the actions of the characters in this show. You also struggled with several of the artistic licenses and historical inaccuracies used by this show, even if you couldn't help watching and enjoying them only too much at times, like Gideon Blackburn. For you, the show was only interesting when Mary, Queen of Scots, finally arrived in Scotland. After all, why spend so much time on her life in France? Not even the history books do that, like James Stewart, Regent of Scotland. You didn't care for the show until Queen Elizabeth I came on the scene. You thought the show was painfully dull until they added the Tudor-Stuart rivalry as a main component of the story arc, like Earl Robert Dudley or Lord Darnley. You didn't care for the show until the religious tension between Catholic and Protestant was bolstered to more full dramatic effect. After all, there's nothing quite so much fun to watch as an attempted coup rooted in religious belief, like John Knox. You despise the main characters most generally, except for perhaps Catherine, as you may have something of a problem with women, though you enjoyed the intrigue and machinations for power engaged in by several of the characters. In fact, you were generally more interested in the supporting characters all around, like Stéphane Narcisse, Lord Chancellor of France. You did not care for the show at all. For whatever reason, you believed that there were more important questions in life than to spend time on any silly part of this show, even the parts rooted in actual history, like King Charles IX of France. Or you stopped watching the show pretty quickly because too often people died on this show, and even though that might have been what happened in real life, historically speaking, you don't like to watch shows with too much death spoiling pretty things. Or you stopped watching because, spoiler, you died, like King Henry II of France or Louis, Prince of Condé. Who would like to start?
Hi, I'm Kristen.
Hi, Kristen.
Hello.
Hello.
I hadn't heard of Reign when it was actually on television. I wasn't a big CW watcher back in the day. So I didn't hear about it until maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. If maybe even not, no, I think about a year ago. And it was recommended to me by one of my castmates in a community theater show who was a teenager. Surprise, surprise. And she just said, I really think you like it because of the costumes and there's some great acting in it. And overall, just a great show. And I love it, and you'll love it too. So I'm like, okay. So I started watching it on Netflix because they had all 4 seasons, and I watched it pretty quickly. Actually, really liked it. Based on that, I would say at the very beginning, I absolutely loved it. It really caught my attention right out of the gate, and it really kept me watching. Towards the end, I felt things got really rushed once she got to Scotland, and I just felt like the pacing was off from the first couple of seasons, so it kind of knocked me down a little bit, but not much. So I'm going to still say, I don't know, I would probably just go down to Catherine. I really enjoyed the show.
So you were Mary Queen of Scots at the beginning?
At the beginning, yep.
Okay.
I was Mary Queen of Scots at the beginning, and then by the end, I would just bump down just one slot on the character question to Catherine de' Medici. I enjoyed the show, but I did have a complicated affection for the Mary character, also based on some of the choices she made, whether they were historical fantasy choices or actually rooted in history. Still loved it. Still really enjoyed it.
Welcome back, Kristen.
Thanks.
Kristen is our most involved Couch Potatoes Unite panelist.
I am. I've been around a while.
You have. You like to come and talk about TV. Mm-hmm. We appreciate you for it.
My name is Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hello. I also didn't ever watch anything on CW. I was not familiar with this show prior to it hitting Netflix, so I also probably discovered it about a year or a little bit more ago. And it was basically, I love all things like historical dramas, historical fiction, so I had been watching other, and I also love this particular like Renaissance time period and kind of just the whole romance of castles and beautiful gowns and scandals and all this kind of stuff going on in castles. So I had already been watching shows like The Tudors, The Crown, those types of shows. So it was recommended to me from Netflix as something I might like. And I started watching it and I absolutely loved it. My husband would always tease me and call it my trashy romance novel show. But I was like addicted right off the bat. I was watching 2-3 episodes every single night until I blew through the entire series. But so I would say though, I do kind of agree with Kristen that by the time we got to the end of the 3rd season and 4th season, it did seem really rushed. And it totally blew past her entire 3rd marriage, which kind of, I don't know, was disappointing to me. And I also really, really loved the whole like love story between Queen Mary and King Francis. So once he died, that kind of deflated my balloon a bit. But so I guess I would say that I also started off as Mary, Queen of Scots, just totally obsessed with the whole show. And even though I watched it all the way to the end and I loved it all the way through, I probably dropped down to about also a Catherine by the end of things.
Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Stephanie, you're brand new to Couch Potatoes Unite.
Yes, it's true.
We are happy you united with us.
Thank you. I'm happy to have united as well.
My name is Gina. There's a lot of questions I have to answer. This show, I did not watch it on CW. I haven't had TV in years. I watch everything on Netflix, and about 2 years ago, I think, I started watching this. I've always been a huge fan of English history. I took several classes in it in college, specifically English history. Mary, Queen of Scots is fascinating to me, and I think maybe when I was 12, I picked up a book on the rivalry between her and Elizabeth, and then after that, I just kind of read anything I could get my hands on. So when I saw there was a show, I was very, very excited, and like everybody else here, I loved it. I didn't have very high hopes going in because it looked kind of more like a teeny bopper show, which, I mean, it is. But I loved everything about it. Megan Follows was a huge draw for me because I loved the Anne of Green Gables series growing up, and I just think she's one of the most amazing actresses, and so seeing her in that was that was a huge draw. But I loved it, loved everything about it, and I'm right there with everybody else on the same page. I did get frustrated with how rushed it was as we got to the end of the 4th season. I definitely felt like they didn't spend enough time on all of that, and I think there was a lot more license taking with history, I felt like, in the last 2 seasons, just because I didn't know too much about the history behind her time in France. So, yeah, I guess that would drop me down to a Catherine or maybe even a Bash towards the end. But I still loved it. I'm very excited to be talking about it now.
Did you start off as Mary then?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Excellent. Welcome, Gina. Gina is also brand new to Couch Potatoes Unite. Thanks for uniting with us.
Thank you.
And my name is Kylie, as I've mentioned in the introduction, and I'm participating as a panelist today as well as moderating the discussion. Let's see, I started watching Reign because if you know me or you've talked to me about TV or you follow the blog or you follow this podcast, you know that I look to see what's coming out on TV. Have done so for quite a long time. I'm much too obsessed and couch potatoey. And I noticed that Reign was coming to the CW. I did actually watch it for part of the time on the CW because it was about Mary, Queen of Scots. It was about the Stuarts. The Tudors and the Stuarts are 2 of the most fascinating houses to me in British history, and I was intrigued to see what they might do with it on the CW. Because I do watch the CW from time to time, and I know what kind of shows they have on there. And so it was interesting to me. I kept watching because largely I did enjoy the plotting in the first 2 seasons probably more than in the second 2 seasons. I thought Adelaide Kane was very winning in the role. I thought that Megan Follows was very interesting and charismatic as Catherine de Medici, and I thought it was interesting that they included her so much. And I kind of got hooked. I mean, as one might. I watched the Tudors and kind of got hooked in the same way, but I think There are better parts about this show, and there are better parts about that show. We can compare, because I'm going to a lot. I did watch all 4 seasons, though, and eventually maybe have finished just today. No big deal, whatever. When I started at the beginning, I actually would probably call myself Catherine in this situation. I don't think I loved it quite as much as the other 3 panelists. To start, I do take some nitpicks with the Mary character in terms of her choices, some of the historical depictions, because I am aware of her France time. Also, the mystical elements confused me a lot. I know, we're going to talk about that. So that kind of drops me down, but I did like the fact that they explored a lot of the things that informed the scandals in politics at that time, particularly between Protestants and Catholics and houses and countries and countries. By the time that the show ended, though, I probably would be a combination of Princess Claude, Leif, and King Francis, because I think I do like the first 2 seasons much better than the last 2 seasons, even though Elizabeth I enjoy watching when they explore her stuff, but we'll talk about that. I did think there was a lot of dreamy men on the show. And I did think I guess I thought the Princess Claude character was sympathetic by the end. She didn't start that way, but I thought, well, this is kind of an interesting thing, and I think she does it more sympathetically than Queen Mary, even at times. So that's where I think I would end. So welcome to our one-time looking back panel at Reign. So the way looking back works, it's very high level. It's whatever you want to talk about. It's your memories of this show, what you liked, what you didn't like. And then there are some specific questions I'll ask at the end, but ultimately it comes down to whatever floats your boat. What do you want the viewer or listener to know about your feelings about Reign? Go. I rephrased that question. It's exciting now. They're all looking a little like petrified, apprehensive.
Oh, where to start, though?
Yeah, there's a
I
lot.
mean, there's so much you can, I don't know. Casting. I'll start there.
Yes.
Good.
So many handsome men. It was a feast for the eyes.
Just beautiful people in general.
yes.
I was
Beautiful
watching
men,
it going,
women.
there's no way that there were this many beautiful
No.
people living at that time.
No,
Absolutely.
Ever.
no,
With good
their
hygiene
teeth would have
and
been
everything.
right.
Yeah.
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 That being said, who do you think was the most attractive person
Conde.
on the show?
No hesitation.
No.
Nope.
No pause.
I thought her brother James was very
Yeah,
attractive.
me too.
Yes,
Brother
I would
James was
actually
very
give
attractive.
a vote for James.
Yeah, I would too.
And I actually, even though I didn't love the season he was in, I thought Bothwell was pretty attractive.
Yeah, he was.
I know I'm going out on a limb here, but something was a little bit intriguing about Narcisse, too.
Yes.
Yes.
agreed. No,
He
agreed.
was
As
so,
much as I
like,
hate
bad.
him.
You
Yeah.
love
Good
to
way.
hate him, though, because
Yeah.
he just lights up the screen, but he's such a despicable character.
Yes.
He did have a very sensitive affection for Lola.
And I loved
Yeah.
Lola. She was one of my favorite characters on the whole show.
Oh, I liked her too.
Very famously, she was Susan in the Chronicles of Narnia movies.
Anna Popplewell, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And she had the best hair on the show.
Yeah.
She did.
For sure. She
She
wins the best
definitely
hair
had the
award.
best hair.
It's very important.
It is.
She was not my favorite of the ladies, though. I think Greer was my favorite of the ladies because I thought she had such an interesting story arc. She starts out, she's just a wealthy girl. She's not titled like the rest of them. And then obviously through all of her romantic mishaps, she ends up in a brothel. And she basically turns into, a madam, a businesswoman of her day, which, kind of highly unrealistic, but I thought it was interesting how it changed, and at the end she was just kind of this empowered single mom with, her brothel. So
I didn't actually
liked
start
her.
liking her until she fell from grace and became a madam.
yeah,
Agreed.
Because I thought she was kind of annoying and pretentious.
Yeah,
and
she was.
She toyed with Leif, which
and
made
he was
me
very
mad.
handsome.
Yeah.
And but then when she kind of became this empowered woman, especially when you're watching a show from a time period where women had
No power.
Nope.
nothing,
Yeah.
that's why I kind of loved Catherine as well, because even though she was just absolute evil, she was so powerful and a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
She almost had, you feel like she had to be that way to
Yeah.
survive.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I don't know that if she was absolute evil, really, as much as she was a power player and knew how to play the power. I mean, the Medicis were a powerful family. It's interesting that they took this. This is true to this part is true to history. She was the regent or the advisor or the consort for most of her life of France, and so she was ruthless in this show. I wonder how ruthless she was, but the Medicis had a reputation, historically speaking, and I thought it was interesting that they informed her character with that reputation.
She was pretty well known, though. I mean, historically speaking, for poisons, or she had a reputation for being very familiar with poisons.
She did.
Yeah,
So-
but I think on the power front, I think it was actually the king's mistress, which is what, Diane de
Diane
Poitiers.
de
Yep.
She was the most powerful woman in France while King Henry was alive. But then after he passed and Charles became the next ruler, that's when Catherine really came into her power, so to speak, historically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, she was regent for everything on the show that you saw is true. She was regent for Charles. Charles does die very quickly. He only reigns like 2 years along with Francis. And then Henry, the younger brother we see in the last season, ascends to the throne and becomes Henry III. And she's still on his privy council. She's still advising him from the background until he finally tires of her and forces her into exile, is how I understand the history to go.
I believe she outlived all but one of her children,
Yes.
which is interesting because if you look at the show, everything she did was motivated by her love for her children, I think.
Yeah.
Except at the end, didn't she try to go after the youngest daughter?
Oh, Lisa.
No, not Lisa. That's the oldest one. The youngest one that we meet in the very last episode.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
Margot,
Throwing-
that's her name.
Yeah, that was a weird choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think it, in real life, she probably was this person. Or at least this is a good guess. But it took a turn.
It did take a turn.
But we can wait for the finale. What else did you think about the show?
It was just beautiful
It was
in
beautiful.
general. I mean, the settings, the costumes, everything visually, it was gorgeous.
Yes, absolutely.
I expect you to learn.
Oh, okay. So now, finally, what I've been waiting for, I'd like to talk about the costumes. If you've seen the show, you know the costumes are amazing. Unless you're a person that really likes historical accuracy, in which case
They're not.
No, they're ridiculous. I watched this show with my roommate, and it every night we would just be laughing. We'd be like, "Oh, that's so terrible!" Like Kenna she dresses like a hippie throughout the series.
It's an episode where she has like a leopard print,
Yeah.
dress on. I'm like, that's not.
It's all beautiful, but very little of it is historically accurate. But it's so fun. It's like watching, Barbie dolls coming out in each scene with all the different gowns and the hairstyles, and Adelaide King looks gorgeous in whatever you
And
put her
everything.
in.
Oh my
Literally
gosh.
everything. So
There was a lot of plunging necklines that did not exist at that time.
yes, I often think
strapless
that.
gowns.
Yes.
Weren't even a thing till like the 30s.
Yeah,
Right.
no,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the jewelry was quite incredible as well.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure they had real jewels and gold, but I just feel like some of these
Statement pieces.
Yes.
Maybe we're not.
they're a little too modern.
Yeah. Well, I think they did kind of bill the show as more of a historical fantasy, so
Yeah.
that's probably where they got the license to bring in some more modern elements that otherwise wouldn't have existed.
I think think about Princess Claude. In the beginning, all she wore were like neon pinks and oranges.
Yep.
Those colors were not
They were not available.
They were not available at that time. So
I appreciated the music,
The modern music.
the modern music.
I loved the modern music.
All of the dancing at court was some instrumental arrangement of modern songs.
Yes.
The Lumineers it wasn't just the theme song, they were
They were
pockmarked
sprinkled
the
throughout it.
series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do love the Lumineers.
I do
Shout
too.
out if you're listening, Lumineers. Call me. Tweet at us. That CPU podcast.
I love that one dance number with the guy. I can't remember where he was from now. When she had like that engagement where there was like an agreement for lumber. I'm trying to think where the guy was from.
Portugal.
Okay, yeah. That one little dance number they did that was
Yeah,
very
that-
racy. And
yeah.
I loved it.
That was very nice. I remember hearing an instrumental version of Lord's Royal at one point during it, and I thought that was really cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Chandelier might have been in there
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, yeah, there was a lot
Yeah, kind of whatever the big hits were.
at the time.
Yeah, they just tried to sneak it in there as an instrumental, which worked well,
Yeah.
actually.
Did, yeah. It was-
Had some lyres going, had it playing on harpsichords at
Yes.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
that was fun.
interesting.
I liked it.
Neat. Yeah.
And the sets were gorgeous. I don't know where they
gosh.
filmed. I didn't do that much research.
They filmed mostly in Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah, that Toronto
Fine city.
Yep,
Shout out
Toronto.
to Canada.
General Toronto area kind of stood in for different parts of Scotland as well.
Okay.
Like they went to some larger greenery spaces. I read this earlier today. I don't remember specifically where, but there are some beautiful places in Toronto that stood in for Scotland and did a wonderful job. I think they did film in Scotland or Ireland maybe a teeny bit just to get more of those rolling green hills, but most of it was filmed in Toronto.
A lot of the actors are Canadian, so
Yes.
that makes tons of sense.
I was kind of curious why the choice of all British accents.
Uh-huh.
Like, the only character with a French accent was that Olivia girl,
Yes.
who I couldn't stand, by the way.
Couldn't stand her at
She
all.
was like the only character on the entire series that had a French accent. All
Yes.
the rest were British, which I thought was an odd. And isn't Adelaide Kane actually like
She's
Australian?
She's Australian, which blows my mind.
Yeah.
Actually, several of them are
Yeah.
from that area.
But if you have a bunch of Canadian actors on a show about France doing British accents, it doesn't make a lot
It seems
of
like it's kind of the standard where no matter where you set it in Europe, whether it's historical or modern, but if it's a non-English speaking country, they always have British accents.
Yeah.
In everything, movies,
It just
other
makes it seem
shows.
foreign.
It does. It's that foreign accent that Americans can pick up on.
But here's the trick. They do move to Scotland, yet nobody has a Scottish
No,
accent.
they don't.
No,
Where they
the
speak
Lord
English.
Yeah.
have a very weak Scottish accent.
It's
but
so weak.
It
Like,
would not be. You wouldn't be able to understand it. Like
Yeah.
if we were back in the time how they spoke then. it would
that's
just-
true.
Right.
Yeah.
But why even go for the weak one?
Right.
It's like, it almost sounds
Consistency purposes, maybe.
I
don't
guess,
know.
but it almost sounds like they're trying and they can't do it.
Yeah, very true.
That bothered me a lot. I'm
Yes.
not gonna lie, because I agree, Stephanie, that was a little weird, but I got used to that because after a while everybody's doing it. You just start to turn off your rational brain. But I never could in Scotland. I was
fair.
like, this is weird. What else didn't you like about the show? If anything. Or did you just love it so much?
The mystical elements. Why don't we
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah,
that?
let's talk about that's weird.
It was unnecessary.
Very unnecessary.
They were trying to appeal to maybe too broad of an audience by
I would
including
agree.
those elements, and
Yeah.
The first season, when it was just like the kind of pagan stuff, I don't know. I was like, it's a little weird. But then when that Delphine character
Delphine was
got
the
into
most
it,
useless character
like,
on
yeah.
the face of the planet.
I mean, Bash is already a made-up person anyway.
Right.
You know, which is a whole like other element to the story that didn't really exist. And then you add in this crazy magical healer person, that the binding spell. I don't know. It was just weird and creepy and unnecessary.
It was very unnecessary.
It made things too long.
Yes.
So there was a couple of times, especially during season 3, when she's primarily there, I thought to myself, this shouldn't have been 18 episodes for the whole season.
Yeah.
Because it felt like they were trying to fill time with that.
It was very uninteresting to me. I looked at IMDb today and I was shocked she was only in 11 episodes because I was like, man, I felt like it was longer that I was waiting for her to die.
Yeah.
Yep. The whole time, every time they were like, somebody's going to die tonight, I was like, oh, let it be her.
And it never was.
No.
I also, Nostradamus did live contemporary to that time, but I don't think he involved himself quite so much in the affairs of
I thought that was interesting. It's a very interesting choice.
I didn't really care for his character
No.
either. He just
Nostradamus.
his voice bothered me a lot, and I couldn't tell really if he was like a good guy or a bad guy.
Yeah.
He was very like, I don't know. And also I kind of felt like he was pretty unnecessary too, with the exception of his prophecy about Francis, which set Catherine off, you know.
That was her whole
her
center of
motivation
emotion, yeah.
for getting rid of Mary, I guess. But I don't know. I felt like he had too big of a part.
He did.
the show.
He kept coming back until he finally went away, and then it was like, okay.
And didn't he disappear with Olivia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he did say goodbye. It wasn't as if it was a ghost in the night.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, he does. He just eventually just leaves with her.
Yeah.
I'm no longer going to involve myself here.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Deuces. Bye, Nostradamus. Yes, and Catherine's, I don't know if that's true to life. I haven't read that much up on her, but she does have, there's significant time spent on her interest in witchcraft and the mystic and the occult. In the last 2 seasons particularly, it's seeded by the Nostradamus stuff, but it seems to go off onto a tangent into weird and unsettling places by the end of the series. Yeah, I just felt it made the series unnecessarily long by the end.
Well, remember at the very end, the Nicole, it was Charles's girlfriend, right?
Yes,
And
the
they
peasant girl.
captured like a Protestant accused of witchcraft, and
Yes.
she asked her to like kill her on this ship out at sea, and like the girl did it, and there was just no explanation around that. Like that really bothered me.
Yeah, they did not set up that character at all. Is this the same character that ends up having a threesome and calls in Satan?
Oh, gosh, I forgot about that.
I forgot about that too.
That all happened in the series finale, not gonna lie.
Oh.
That happened in the
watched it.
season finale?
The
Wow.
series finale.
Oh, the series
This
finale.
is the end of the show.
Wow.
1/3 of it was spent on this witchy character that they imprison.
Really?
Yes, and that Catherine tries to use to see the future because Charles and Henry are going
Right.
at it and wants to see if they will,
Who else
kill
was
each
in the
other.
threesome?
Stefan, Narcisse.
Oh, of course. That's right. Yes, I remember that now.
Mm-hmm.
Narcisse, then, he just kept coming back.
Yeah, he did.
He was like the Rasputin of this show. Like, they did not kill him.
No.
He was everywhere. And every time like something was wrong, it was like, oh, there's Narcisse. Like, it kind of became
pulling
comical.
the strings behind the
Exactly.
scenes. Yeah.
The puppet master.
But he made it interesting. So
Yeah.
even though it was funny, Rasputin style, I guess, that he kept
Yeah.
coming back, at least I enjoyed watching him.
Yeah. I
That weird
enjoyed
obsession
looking
with
at him.
baths.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. I don't
That
know.
was kind of funny because he had that like picture of Lola in the bath. It was almost like sending a naked text, and then he like passed it around to all of his friends. And I was like, I'm trying to teach kids a lesson about sexting here. I'm picking up on that.
Well, and that's, of course, how he woos her, by putting a rat in her bath and making
Right.
her think it's Catherine.
Right.
Because nothing says romance like a rat.
Yeah.
Nothing says, marry me because you know I'm a bad guy, like a rat.
That was a weird pairing, I felt like him and
Yeah.
Lola. Although I know he truly loved her, it was a weird pairing because it started out very creepy.
It did.
It was always kind of very like leering and creepy, and then she just kind of fell for him, and and he was on and off with Catherine like throughout everything. I feel like so.
I actually felt like he and Catherine were a really good match.
They were.
though.
Exactly.
Like they had similar diabolical kind of personalities.
Yeah,
Their dialogue was fun to watch, too.
yeah, it was.
Just because
It
they
was.
had really, really good chemistry.
Yeah, that's true.
I liked those characters, even though they were evil. They were good B-villains to whatever was happening, or the actual villains. But sometimes it was hard to tell who the villains
Yes.
were.
Yeah, that's so true.
I actually kind of, for a small period, when Mary and Frances kind of split up initially and they were going to live their separate lives, I was kind of hoping that Frances and Lola would get together.
Yeah.
Just
I had
briefly.
mixed feelings about that.
Which are?
Well, I mean, Lola, it's one of Mary's ladies, obviously, and Frances, it's still her husband, It felt very, gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? It felt like there really weren't remaining feelings between them. It just felt like, it was just like, well, we had this baby and now we're just dealing with the aftermath, but I didn't feel like there was any emotional connection, which I guess might have made it more challenging, but to me, that was kind of a disappointment to me. I felt they could have developed that more.
Or resolved it better.
Or resolved it better. People really seem to get over things quickly in this show.
That is
Yeah.
true.
Like if you think about like Claude, she hopped all around and and then she ends up with Laith, who was like
So
Greer's.
totally in love with,
Yeah.
obsessed with Greer.
That was a character, like you said, that really redeemed herself. She was terrible. I was thinking about that the other day. Remember, like the first episode, you find out that she tricked Bash into sleeping with her.
Yeah.
Like,
Which
who
was
tricks
super gross.
Yeah.
brothers?
Yeah.
Like, why?
And how old would she have been
Right?
when that happened? Like 10,
13
12? I
maybe.
mean,
Yeah.
Very young. Very young.
because, I mean, technically, wasn't Frances supposed to be like 15, 16 years old?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If she's his younger sister,
And she-
she
yeah.
would have been like maybe 14 at this point. so-
Right. And hadn't she been sent away for like so many years? Like they hadn't seen her in like 10 years, so
Yeah.
it's concerning.
I don't know how all these people didn't have syphilis because they were just everybody was sleeping with everybody on this show. It was crazy.
King Henry did have syphilis, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that what eventually like kind of drove him crazy?
Well, but in the series, they said then that it wasn't. It was the poisoned Bible.
Oh, that's right.
that
That's
made
right. I
him-
forgot
Because they
all
thought
about that.
Catherine had syphilis, and then it turned out the Bible had been
It
poisoned.
was the poisoned Bible.
But I wouldn't be surprised if he actually did. I will say
so
one
sensitive.
of the most like heart-wrenching moments for me in the show was when there was like the conversation where Frances kind of like releases Mary to Conde, if you will, where they're at the fireplace and he's saying to her, I'm going to let you have this. I felt so bad for him. I teared up a little bit.
Oh, I did.
It was like heartbreaking to watch him do that, but then he turned really bitter after that.
Yeah.
But I I enjoyed him. I loved Francis.
I love
Yeah, I did
Francis
too.
too.
I mean, even when he was at his worst, he still seemed, they portrayed him well and as a good person, because the history books are not kind to Francis.
Yeah, well, especially like when they talk about his health
He's
issues,
just kind of like a
that
weakling.
he was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
sickly and small and stuff like that.
I wonder if they really were that in love.
I have read, I don't know if they were that in love, but I've read that they were actually like in love with each other in real life, at least that they didn't ever actually like break up. She didn't actually have an affair.
Right,
You
yeah.
know, these things he didn't have a bastard child.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
things never happened. Yeah, I liked their romance throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I didn't mind Bash in the first season because I thought he had a good relationship with Francis, and I thought it added some intrigue because you got to see King Henry and the Catherine de Medici and the Diane de Poitiers sort of triangle play out amongst the two boys, the two brothers. But then once Diane was gone and Mary's flirtation with Bash was over and done quick as a fiddle, he became really superfluous too, which is too bad because I like Torrance
I did.
Coombs.
I did
He's
too.
a really good actor.
And handsome.
Yeah.
And handsome, yes. He's been on other CW shows like the originals too.
Oh. I thought it was interesting how his story ended. He just sort of disappeared with the pagans in Scotland. Like
Yeah.
we never heard from him again. I think he told Mary he was like, "I'll come find you," but
He never did.
he never did.
And I wanted to know if he was a druid in the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was his special ability and
What
how
was
far
that?
did he get with it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping he and Kenna were going to work out.
I actually liked that, even though I found her abhorrent at times.
Agreed.
Yeah.
She was my least favorite of the ladies.
Oh,
except maybe the one who
absolutely.
died, I guess.
Yeah,
She
and
was
she
kinda
died pretty
annoying.
quick.
Yeah. But Kenna, I just thought, man, she's just playing with fire and lighting matches all the time.
Yes,
So-
all the time.
And she ended up actually going on to other shows, probably more notorious or famous shows that you've heard of as opposed to some of these actors and actresses.
She is like really pretty though.
She's stunning, yeah.
Yeah.
She was like the prettiest girl on there.
Oh, yeah.
So I could see how she would get cast in a million other things.
Isn't that always the way? What else can we say about Rain? Was there any season that was your favorite or season that was your least favorite?
Fourth season was my
Fourth
least.
season.
I
favorite.
agree
So
completely.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think that's the worst one
Yeah.
for sure.
And-
Maybe if they would have spent less time on Delphine and more time
Yeah, right.
on the later years of Mary's life.
What did we think of Queen Elizabeth I and Rachel Scarston as in that role? Because there's a lot of Queen Elizabeth I depictions.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So how does she rank?
I liked it. At first, I wasn't too sure, just because I have such a huge obsession with Queen Elizabeth that I wasn't sure I was gonna like how they presented it. But I thought it was cool. It was a little bit different. You really saw some of her vulnerable sides, which I thought was neat.
I thought it was interesting that they meditated on the fact that she remembered her father and mother and how her mother died and sort of that love-hate relationship with his memory, and that's not something you often see. You
Yeah.
usually see the strong queen well into her reign as opposed to the younger queen just finding her footing. And they gave her a little bit of a humanity, but at the same time, I don't know, sometimes Rachel bothered me because I just thought she was the way she delivered lines was very precise.
I would agree with that.
Overly enunciated.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just thought, I'm having trouble sympathizing with you right now. And normally I like watching Queen Elizabeth I stories, so...
Yeah.
Same.
She wasn't entirely likable.
And they spent a lot of time on her, like by the fourth season. I mean, in the third season, she has quite a bit of time spent, but as almost juxtaposition to Mary and without sort of there's a relational aspect to Mary. Everything is how it will affect Mary, how it will affect Scotland. By the fourth season, they were 3 islands of countries that you were just following, whether or not they
Right.
related or
They
connected.
were not always
Right.
related.
Which I did not like so much.
Yeah.
I thought it kind of dragged the show down a little bit. That's why I fell so far in the character question, I think.
I think by the fourth season, especially like after going through her whole relationship with Lord Darnley, like I just felt like by the end, like, is Mary ever going to get some happiness in her poor life? I mean,
Yeah.
her whole life was just like one struggle, disappointment, just
She needed a win of
yeah,
some sort.
Yeah.
somewhere. And
Yeah.
she doesn't seem like she had those like brief periods of happiness with Francis when she was
Right.
really young, but it just seems like after that it was like she was just miserable.
Well, that's kind of her story, right?
Yeah.
So then there's the people that, this is an interesting question that I did want to pose. I didn't put it in the talking points, but I've been thinking a lot about this because Mary Queen of Scots is a sympathetic or a non-sympathetic character depending upon how you view her history, because she typically is depicted as a very headstrong person who had a lot of passions and rage apparently in her life, and kind of some of the decisions maybe she made brought these sorts of dangers toward her, while others were not her choice, just by circumstance of birth and how she was treated, which I think the show does try to delve into. I just don't know if they do it in a historically accurate way. So what did you think about that? Because she's the moral of the whole show, even though they don't spend as much time on her in the end.
Are you asking whether we thought she was a sympathetic character?
Yeah.
Or, yeah. I mean, she certainly was in the beginning. There kind of came a point where she started acting a little bit more like Catherine, which was a very interesting juxtaposition, I think. You know, she started with, Narcisse's son. She started kind of, making sacrifices here and there, and people died, which I thought was very interesting because it kind of shows you how Catherine could have gotten the way she did. But I still loved her. I thought she was a good character, even though I hated a lot of her choices.
Fair enough.
She, I think for the most part, the character on the show, I can't speak for the real person, but the character on the show, I think for the most part had good intentions in general, and I think sometimes she kind of used her power or toyed with people a little bit, like especially with her relationship with Prince Conde. I felt like she pushed him into turning into this sort of like evil, power-hungry guy by the end who was like obsessed with her. And it seems like, and I don't know if the real Mary was as charming and bewitching to men as she was, but because it seemed like on the show every man would fall in love with her. And I almost feel like she used that to her advantage, but she didn't realize she was doing it, type of a thing. Like she didn't realize how obsessed these men were getting with her, and they would do anything and put their lives in danger for her. So that's why I didn't feel like she was being evil or manipulative about it.
So you found her sympathetic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence. At times, I think especially earlier on, like in seasons 1 and 2, I found her more sympathetic. But I think in seasons 3 and 4, when her rivalry with Elizabeth really starts playing out, there are some choices that she makes, whether they were historically accurate or if they were fictionalized, that just were like, really? You're really going to do that? I don't think that's the best idea. And so that's kind of where I started to flip a little bit. I still really found her engaging, even if her choices weren't the best. But yeah, so I'm kind of on the fence. So at times she's very sympathetic, and at other times I'm just kind of like, you kind of dug your own hole there. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I've never been as fascinated by Mary Queen of Scots from a history standpoint. Just because everything I'd ever learned about her made her a problematic figure in history. Which isn't to say that Elizabeth isn't a problematic character, but she tends to be the more lauded of the two rivals. And so it was interesting that the show, until of course Elizabeth executes her, that's not nice.
Right.
Just because she's got word and has paranoia. That was true to life. That was one of the things that I thought a lot about watching Reign, was like, is Mary Queen of Scots really this sympathetic? Do I really buy what the show is telling me about her? I don't think it's all these other forces. Was John Knox really that involved in trying to overthrow her? I mean, I'm pretty sure there was some of that, but he was far more outwardly outspoken against the Pope, not so much against the crown. So there was that kind of stuff. That kind of took me out of the suspension of disbelief by the end. I think that's why I like the first 2 seasons more. Didn't know as much about it. Don't know as much about French history. I do love British and Scottish history. I don't know as much about French history. So I was much more engaged, and if it was a fantasy,
Right,
so
it didn't
be it.
bother you.
Let's go.
Yep.
But then by the time we get to Scotland and England, I'm starting to think that I don't think that happened.
Yeah.
Or it didn't happen here. Or
Yeah, they definitely took some artistic licenses where and when things happened.
the Gideon character, how did we feel about him? Because I'm pretty sure he's not real, or if he is, he did not have those relationships.
That was interesting. That's all I can say about it. I have nothing else to add. I just thought that it was interesting. It was kind of a weird choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had relations with both queens.
Yeah.
and married Elizabeth in secret.
Yes.
The Robert Dudley thing was real,
And that really was very brief.
and it happened too early.
You know what I thought was interesting, though? They hinted at more in this show that his wife's death might have been a suicide. And I feel like you don't usually see that. But I know that is what is suspected, because I just thought that's interesting, because obviously she knew that he was having an affair. I mean, according to the rumors.
Well, Bothwell does kill Darnley in history. That's how he died, and he does become our husband. I think the third husband.
They didn't spend really any time
No.
on him at all, and there's still, I mean, I guess historically speaking, still some question as to whether or not she was forced into marrying him or if that was actually her choice. So I wish they would have delved it. I mean, it probably would have been mostly made up, but it would have been interesting to see that play out more.
Well, and history seems to hold more that Darnley was murdered, but the syphilis thing is a rumor. So, yeah, just a lot of, it seems like whenever there was speculation, they took the speculation and said, here's what we're going to do with that speculation.
Yeah.
Which worked or didn't, depending upon the situation.
Right.
I really hated his character, by the way.
I did too.
Darnley?
Yes, he
Yeah.
was
Hated him.
awful. And I felt like she worked so hard to try at the beginning to like create a relationship with him and like kind of force herself to love him. You know, and there was like a little glimmer of it at the beginning, but he just turned out to be so awful.
He was awful.
Well, and as I understand it, also with that relationship, there was at least some happiness in the beginning in real life. She did turn around and he did plot against her with her privy council. That happened. And she did have, struggle with him after that. But it seemed like there was some mutual agreeability about their relationship for a while. So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. You start to get into the stuff that you're really familiar with and you're like, show, why are you doing this to me, show?
Yep.
So I don't know. I know I'm sounding like a Debbie Downer and I don't mean to, but this is also what I just watched and I don't know.
Well, I wasn't super familiar with her story going in. Like, I had always been more interested in, like, King Henry VIII type storyline, and so I wasn't very familiar with Elizabeth or Mary, but it was, like, kind of up my alley interest-wise. I didn't really know a lot going in, so then when I started reading how much of this is true afterwards, I was so disappointed because I was like, there's nothing historically accurate on the show at all.
There's some of it, the big things.
Yeah. But it's like, oh man, like Bash wasn't a real person? Man.
He was cute. Sorry. I'm
So
in the midst
yeah,
of
I
rewatching
guess
season 1.
they took a lot of artistic license, but I still enjoyed the story that they wrote.
Yeah. I liked the atmosphere that they created. I loved the opening titles in the first two seasons.
Yeah. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
One thing that I really loved about this show, and just kind of thinking, it came into my head just thinking back on it over the past couple days, knowing we're preparing for this podcast, but I loved the female relationships in this show. First we had Mary with her ladies, and then the way her whole dynamic shifted with Catherine, to where Catherine actually became like one of her biggest allies. And I think that was something that was missing in the 4th season, was that she didn't have strong female friendships. I mean, she was just kind of surrounded by men, and I thought that
Greer.
added. Well, and Greer was still back in France.
She was for a while.
That's right. She came to Scotland for a short time. That was interesting. And the letter that was written, that Mary wrote to Elizabeth,
In the
towards the
finale.
end, was very, I don't know, was powerful. I don't know how realistic it was.
I don't know. I think they correspond.
They corresponded. I know that for sure, but I don't know
about that specific letter.
Yeah.
Well, since we're now on it, we're kind of talking. I can feel you sort of going, what else is there to say about Reign? What did we think about the series finale? So we've touched on some stuff. We had the weird pagan magic spelling with the sex.
Yeah.
And then we had, sort of Elizabeth jockeying with Charles Drake and her handmaiden that she decided the handmaiden was working with Narcisse and had poisoned Gideon Blackburn, who she had married in secret in a binding ceremony that nobody else witnessed. No big thing. There was that piece of it, and there was the piece where there was the coup in Scotland as Mary was having James, who would be James I, King of Scotland and England. And then there was kind of this jump cut, so we see Bothwell kind of take care of Darnley, who has syphilis and is talking to the ghost of his former lover and is being manipulated by his mother.
Yep.
He dies. They run out of the castle because the everybody's coming basically to overthrow her, and then it jump cuts to 24 years later or whenever, after she's been imprisoned in the castle that Elizabeth hides her in. They don't even explain that that's what's happened.
No.
I just know that.
Yeah, I looked it up too, like just to make sure that this is what they're portraying right now. Oh,
Yes.
Okay.
I detested the way that was done.
Yeah.
I felt like there needed to be some cushion there. They needed to show, what happened in the intervening years. They didn't have to spend, 40 years showing us her under house arrest, but it would have been nice to have some context, I think.
Yeah.
For that.
This is where I felt the pacing was really bad, in particular with season 4. I mean, season 4 felt very rushed, but ironically, it was the series finale that had the worst pacing.
Terrible.
And this was the biggest example of it, where they just jumped ahead and they they just skipped over so much. That would have been interesting to see, the context behind, why Elizabeth put her in under house arrest or in prison for that amount of time. What was her life like? What was going on with baby James? Because then he did become Elizabeth's successor. It would have been interesting to see at least a little bit of that time.
Could have done that in 3 or 4 episodes, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then if they wanted to do a big jump in the last episode, I would have felt better. More satisfied because, we saw leading up to it.
While spending too much time maybe on the ins and outs in the beginning of the season, because it did feel super repetitious by the end.
Yeah.
It was all about, in France, Charles versus Henry, one going after the other. I did not care for Nicole or about Nicole.
Nobody cared.
Not at all.
And then, the stuff with Elizabeth even was, I sympathized with her the least because we had spent the least amount of time with her. And she was the most familiar of all the historical figures.
Right.
So by this time you're like, this isn't her story and I don't care about it.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things in the series finale that left me feeling unsatisfied. I almost wish they had just left it with, she runs off into the night and we see her with the baby, and then maybe they have kind of like, instead of a visual montage, although I think they were trying to find a way to bring Tony Redbow back in.
I liked that a lot, though.
To her dream sequence. They would have at least had some kind of, Mary Queen of Scots went on to, be imprisoned in England for 18 years until Elizabeth beheaded her for the crime of la la la. And then, could have given footnotes on all, because they didn't even spend any time on all the French characters.
No, they didn't.
Or Elizabeth I, though we all know what happened to her. So that was the, I know why they did it. I think they wanted to give everybody the dreamy, happy, this is a really morbid tale. Her tale does not end well, so here's our happy ending.
Right.
But that felt disingenuous to the story they were trying to tell, especially since she was the victim in all of her things.
Right.
Come on, CW, get a tragedy and stick with it.
Do you think they knew ahead of time when they were starting season 4 that this was going to be the last season?
They did, because they almost canceled it after season 3. And it was fan support that brought the 4th season
around.
That makes me even more angry.
It does, because they knew how many episodes they had to wrap things up, and yet they still did it in the last 10 minutes. That's really disappointing to know.
Yes. That's, I think, what's most unsettling about it. Like, you could have plotted this out better. You could have rushed through her marriage to Darnley because nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
Anyway. And that guy was a little bit weird.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Will Kemp in the role of Darnley? He's done some other things.
He's handsome.
He is.
I keep saying that,
There are no unattractive people.
Yeah, I think we could disagree.
Don't exist.
Yeah. I thought he was good. That's all I have to say. I detested him. I didn't trust him from the minute. It's funny because I'm a big history buff, but my roommate is not. And so we watched this together, and she's like, "Oh, this guy seems so nice," and I'm like, "Don't trust him.
We're not supposed to like him.
He is bad." And all through all those episodes where he's like faking and putting on that show and saving kids from the fire, and I'm like, "Don't fall for it."
Yeah. That whole business about the crown matrimonial, that was real. He wanted that.
Yep.
That's why that all happened.
I wonder how much of a role his mother played.
I wondered that too. The lady who played his mother was very good. I thought, man, they should have beefed her up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Instead of having her come in and out.
Yeah.
She was kind of like Scotland's Catherine de Medici.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. What was it? There was a scene where those two finally met too.
Yes.
And that was really cool.
It was. It was during that party with the streamers, and they had to follow the ribbon, and they got little gifts or something.
Yeah, something along those lines. But
that's what I think made me think, gosh, she's good. There should be more like this.
Yeah.
Didn't happen.
Some phenomenal acting in this show. Really good. Really, really good.
They sold what they were given.
Uh-huh.
They sold what they were given. So do you feel the series finale was a proper send-off?
No.
That's unanimous and no hesitation. All right. So how do you feel about this show now? Well, you all watched it a year or two ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so time has not passed for you very much. Let's project into the future. Do you think Reign will hold up? Would you have watched more seasons? Should it have ended sooner, or was it good where it ended?
It could have used one more season, even if it was a shorter one.
Yep.
Just to really expand upon those condensed pieces while she was in Scotland and imprisoned in England. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't think I wouldn't have liked it past a shortened or mid-length 5th season. Mm-hmm. But as far as holding up, it's a tough question to answer because visually, yes, it will hold up because there's nothing to date it because it's already set in the past. But I guess it will depend if another series about Mary Queen of Scots comes along and how this will compare against a hypothetical future series. Because it is definitely more on the teeny bopper soap level, especially the first 2 seasons. I feel like maybe the 3rd and 4th aren't as much in that category. So I think that's to be determined. But so far, I think it'll still hold up. It can still be rewatchable. I feel too.
Has anyone, kind of a side note, but has anyone seen that show on Netflix? I think, is it called Assassins? But it's about different assassinations, and the first episode is actually about Mary Queen of Scots plotting Darnley's death with her lover, Bothwell.
No, I haven't.
I saw it on Netflix right after I finished this show, and I was like, oh, I don't know. I've already seen a lot of not historically accurate crap with the show I just watched, so do I want to venture into this one? But I'd like to see that. But I think you're right. I think it'd be interesting to see if there was another piece made about Mary Queen of Scots.
Movie recently?
There was, yeah.
And I wanted to see it because of this show. It got me more interested in her story, and I had been meaning to see it, but just hadn't got around to it yet. Have you seen the movie? Or
I did.
Saoirse Ronan and Margot Robbie.
Yep.
One was Elizabeth.
You know what turned me off was them talking in the trailer because they never met face to face in all their time. They corresponded through letters. She had her imprisoned in her country, but they never met face to face, and that bothered me.
I guess I'd be interested to see the movie. And
I would
see
like
how
to
the
see it.
story compares to the story that the CW told.
Well, and not a lot. I mean, there isn't a lot of fictional telling of Mary Queen of Scots. I think this is the first really long and fleshed out one I've ever seen. Mostly it's the Tudorian,
Right.
whether it's Henry VIII or
Elizabeth
or
Yeah.
Bloody Mary, Mary the First, who came in between. Usually not Mary Queen of Scots. Nobody focuses on Scotland because her son is the one who ends up taking over England reign. But whether or not this show will hold up, I don't know if I could rewatch it just because it was very soapy. But I think it would generally hold up. I think the only thing that dates it is the music that they chose.
Yeah.
It's very, mid-20 teens, and I think right now that's okay, but as time passes, that will become more of a thing. Unless people stop recognizing indie music, in which case it's all good.
I mean, as far as a rewatch, I'm in the middle of a rewatch right now.
You said Reign is your life, Gina.
Yeah. So, but this is my actual first rewatch since I finished the series. Besides just dreaming about it and using GIFs all the time. And I love it even more the second time around. The mystical stuff is really just taking me off even more though, because I'm like, all right, let's quit wasting time on this and get on with the, the romance and the political, but I'm enjoying it. But I think you're right about maybe the music and stuff. I think about if this had been made in like the 80s, and we had like Material Girl playing in the background while,
I would still love that right now.
I would love it, but it would feel dated. It would feel dated.
It would. Agreed.
Or the costumes that are, to us, they make sense because it was in line, a lot of it with what was fashionable in our time, but you might see, kids in 20 years might be like, what are they wearing?
They might go back to high collars and corsets that go up the chest as opposed to landing at the chest line. Yeah. I have nothing further to add.
Me either.
All right. So Reign was created by Laurie McCarthy and Stephanie Sengupta. This is Laurie's second TV creation. She first created Windfall, which was a canceled show from 2006 that I'd never heard of personally. This is Stephanie's first creation and the first on which both of them have collaborated to create. I asked this question about whole shows because sometimes creators influence. Would you watch any other projects they create together or separately? Will you watch Windfall if you can find it? Why or why not?
I don't know what Windfall is.
Yeah, I never heard of it
either.
Probably doesn't
What it
exist
was.
really if we're being honest,
Right.
because it's one season. And
I mean,
I've never heard of it.
If it was more of like historical drama type stuff, I might be interested in watching it. But I don't really pay attention to the writers of things usually.
I'd be interested to see how the show compares, just in style and in feel, knowing that it was created by the same two people working together, but it's probably be very difficult to find, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd never heard of these creators before. Not that I'm familiar with all TV show creators out there, but never heard of them. I don't think they've done anything really since. I don't know. I mean, I don't usually follow it because of who the creators are. On a very, the rare side of things, I eventually followed, J.J. Abrams from Alias to Lost after I got over a very traumatic experience with Alias. Having J.J. Abrams leave to go create Lost.
And then went into a traumatic experience with Lost.
Right. But then because I ended up liking Lost for the most part, and then those two create, and some of the writers on Lost went on to create Once Upon a Time, and things that Elizabeth Merriweather went on from New Girl to create Single Parents. There's very few creators that I will at least, oh hey, I know that name. What are they doing now? But these two won't make the cut. It's going to definitely be more what's the topic than who the creator is.
I do pay attention to writers because I like to think I'm an amateur writer, and so that part of it interests me, but I would not necessarily be interested in what these two create. Only because normally soap opera romancy stuff is not really my cup of tea. I only watched this show because it was historical fiction, which I do have an interest in. I watch a lot of historical fiction, so I don't know if I love the way they handled it or show ran this one, especially because of the way they ended it, so I would not at this time be convinced. But I do follow a creator. I will follow a creator if I think, man, that show was really good. I bet you this show will be too. I will follow them. Like the Duffer Brothers. If they make more TV, they created Stranger Things. I will follow them. And I will also follow the Game of Thrones guys. Season 8 is a topic. We won't broach it. Yeah.
That's another podcast.
That we already do.
Yep.
How does Reign compare to other dramas, romantic dramas, or historical dramas? How would you rank it among your personal favorite series, either in its genre or in general, if it even merits a ranking?
Well, you said you'd seen all the episodes of The Tudors, so what is your thought there?
Well, see, The Tudors was highly problematic as well.
It was highly. I didn't watch the whole thing.
I didn't either.
No.
I also thought The Tudors first, that was 4 seasons. They split it just about, the first 2 seasons were purely Catherine of Aragon and Anne Boleyn. The last 2 seasons rushed through his last 4 wives. Jonathan Rhys-Meyers was an interesting choice, not at all historically accurate, but a good performer. He was very charismatic. I enjoyed that. So in much the same way that Adelaide Kane was very winning, he was very winning. And it was interesting, some of the choices they made, a lot of historical fiction. To me, they're very similar shows. They just have different atmospheres. The Tudors was very dark.
Very dark.
It went straight into sort of the religious backlash because of Henry wanting his annulments and divorces and beheading people and separating from Rome. Whereas this one spent time on it, and I think spent a good amount of time on it, but was more focused on romance. And the only romance that the Tudors really spent any time on was Henry and Anne Boleyn. So I think they're similar. They're kind of equal in quality, but I probably like Reign a little bit better because by the end of the Tudors, I did not like the girl they got to play Catherine Howard, not that she was the best of the 6. And the girl that played Anne of Cleves was too pretty. And there was just a lot of problematic stuff. They handled that first annulment / Anne Boleyn period really, really well, and then it kind of petered off, in my opinion. Whereas this one, at least, they made a good old college try of telling her story in Scotland, even if they paced it poorly in the end and did a lot of weird choices that left you unsettled by the time the show was done. So yeah, similar, but I would give Reign the edge.
I would agree with that. But I think for me with the Tudors, it got a little softcore a lot.
It was on Showtime.
Yeah, and
it was very.
Why is this necessary? I mean, I guess there's a draw there. They're trying to get people to watch it, whatever. But I guess I'm more interested in the actual story and less on the sex aspect of things.
Yeah.
So I felt like at least Rain was a little more toned down in
Yes.
that aspect.
Thank you.
I
Network
appreciated
TV.
that.
So that's why, I mean, even though I love both stories, that element itself gave Rain the edge for me.
And I know they've compared it to Gossip Girl. I've never really watched that. I think the only thing that even makes that comparison viable is Her and Her Ladies in Waiting, because they did a lot of that. But, you know, that's what women did in the court, so I just I didn't feel that part of it was off the mark, and it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
I love that dynamic, too.
Yeah.
That relationship was a big part of the story, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too. And yeah, there were romances, but romances were part of the politics of the time. That's what women were
That was their
there
currency.
for.
There was their currency.
Yeah.
How they could get a prospect and how they could bear children was all they talked about anyway, especially in the upper class. So I guess that comparison I feel is a little unfair. And if you're somebody who's looking for some sort of erudite television series on the CW, you're looking in the wrong place. This is just how
Are
I
you
feel.
looking on the CW?
You go there for superheroes,
Right.
vampires, and soap operas. That's it.
Yep.
And maybe some, like America's Top Model, but I don't do that.
No.
No.
Everybody's agreeing with me. It's so agreeable. Well, you follow the cast members to other projects, or have you watched anything they've been on in the past? None of them are super famous. The most famous person was Craig Parker, who played Narcisse. He was on Legend of the Seeker, Spartacus, and then there was somebody Alan Van Sprang, who played Henry II before he died, was also on The Tudors. He had a small supporting role for a while.
I'd never seen any of these people in anything before, and the only other thing I've watched since was a skincare tutorial by Adelaide Kane.
Did it work? Did you feel good?
I didn't do the skin. I just watched her do it.
Okay. Are you convinced by her?
She does have great skin.
Beautiful skin. Yeah.
And actually, I think I watched it because I was more interested in hearing what her real accent sounded like.
Yeah, I would like to see
I was
that.
just like, oh, I wonder what her real voice sounds like. So I watched it. But yeah, I mean, I guess I wouldn't mind seeing something by any of these other actors. I just haven't seen anything pop up anywhere where I recognized any of them.
Toby is in a similar period drama that's on Netflix. A friend of mine was telling me about it.
It's Medici something or other.
I don't think it's the Medici one. It's something. Maybe it is. That
I think
one.
it is.
Is it that one?
Yeah,
okay,
because
yeah.
Him and Rose Williams, who plays Princess Claude, are in that.
Oh, okay. But she was like, he's a big asshole in it. He's a big jerk in
That's
it.
okay. Asshole is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
But she,
Not too much, though.
but she's like, you know, it'll ruin Francis for you. And I was like, I don't care. And then Megan Follows is in another show right now. And it was interesting because she also plays like a strong female character. And I read an interview with her just randomly online, kind of juxtaposing her role on Reign with the show that she's on now. That kind of made me want to see it. I think this one's set in the Old West or something, but I'm not sure what it's called.
Yeah, and I didn't list her because a lot of her projects are Canadian.
Yes.
So we're only going to get them via Netflix or maybe CW.
Yeah. I haven't followed anyone from Reign, like, on purpose to other shows, but I did recognize a lot of people from other shows, you know, because I had been watching Jane the Virgin up until watching Reign, and then Petra / Inezka from Jane the Virgin, I'm going to slaughter her name, and I apologize.
Yale Grobglas.
Thank you, her. She played Olivia, who ended up running off with Nostradamus, and I'm like, hey, I know her.
Oh.
She was in this. And then Adelaide Kane, she went on, after Reign was done, she got a role on the final season of Once Upon a Time as Drizella / Ivy. So,
Wicked stepsister.
Yeah,
She
one of the
was
Wicked
delightful.
stepsisters. I didn't realize that was her at first, and I'm like, wait, I've seen her somewhere, and oh yeah, that's right, she was the lead on Reign. She did wonderful on that show. And then a random other one that I recognized was Dan Jeanette, who played her brother James. I randomly am watching the Good Witch series from Hallmark on Netflix when I just need something super light and cheesy in the mornings. But he's not really in it. I think he was, I guess this follows like a movie series of the Good Witch, so he was more based in that, and he's not so much in the show now. But it was just one of those like, oh yeah, I've seen him on Reign. Okay, this makes sense. But everybody else haven't followed, haven't seen really in anything.
Would you? Does this cast motivate you to say, hey, Adelaide Kane's in this, I'm going to watch it?
Yes, I think so. I really liked her.
I'm actually surprised more of them haven't gone on to do bigger things.
Yeah.
Because I thought that they were all great actors. You know, sometimes some of these period shows, like the acting can be really cheesy. You know?
Yeah.
And this was, I felt, genuine and good. So I was surprised to see a lot of them haven't gone on to do big films or something like that.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that Anna Popplewell or Lady Lila, that she hasn't done anything really since this. And but she really hadn't done much in between Narnia and this either.
I wondered about that too, and this is just a theory of mine, but when you make the jump from child actors to non-child actors, it's really hard, so I think that was kind of been her struggle.
Maybe.
And maybe she'll get more.
You know who was a weird casting choice for this? Did anybody find it strange? Tom Everett Scott.
Yes!
Yeah, weird.
Elizabeth's advisor.
Yes, and he was in maybe 6 episodes, but I mean, he's
secretly in love with her.
Yeah, he was pretty big. I feel like in the 90s, you know, he did that thing you do, and he, you know,
kind of the biggest name this show had.
Yeah, and he came out of nowhere, and you know, then he.
I just realized that was him when you just said that. I didn't even realize because he did look familiar to me.
Yes, I love
And
him.
That Thing You Do is one of my top 5 favorite
Oh,
movies of all
absolutely,
time.
it's a great
Wow, all right.
So,
I love that movie too.
love that movie. And I can't believe I didn't recognize him.
Oh, yeah.
But now that you said that. Okay.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that is
A little
odd.
older, a little more salt and pepper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And recently he just did like the Diary of a Wimpy Kid movie with some other mom that was like a star.
Oh, it was
in the
Jennifer
90s.
Garner, I think. Is she in that one or no?
I can't.
No,
I don't know,
she's
but I saw the
not.
preview and I was like, oh man, these people that were like so hot in the 90s, now they're playing like the parents. And so that was kind of funny to me. But it was
Yeah,
just
and then
weird to see him.
Another one, John Barrowman, famous English actor known for Doctor Who and a bunch of other things. He was
And Malcolm Merlin.
in
on
Malcolm
Arrow.
Merlin on Arrow, which is a CW show. He was also in...
Who was he?
He was Lord Monroe.
He was the Scottish lord that was trying to force.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I'm like,
her
that
to
was
marry his
another
son.
like big name that I'm
that
like,
just
what
kinda
are you
came out
doing
of-
here?
Yeah.
Yeah. But he got a chance to play a Scottish
with his real
with
accent.
his real accent.
Which he doesn't sport out very. I've seen him at a Comic-Con. He's super awesome, and I highly recommend the experience. Comic-Cons are, they're for people who like things, but it's good people watching, and sometimes you get entertainers. He is an entertainer. He works the crowd. I met him. He's very nice and really beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah, that was another like random.
Yeah.
I would probably follow him, even though he had such a small role. He is one that I probably would follow to different projects because he always chooses pretty good ones.
He does.
So he's
got a
reliable.
lot of nerd cred too.
Yeah, he does.
Hashtag nerd cred.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would purposefully follow anybody myself. Megan follows is a very. Her and Adelaide Kane were the two best on the show
Absolutely.
by far. I think if they appeared somewhere, I would say, oh great, they're in it. But I don't know that I would actually say, I'm going to watch it because they're in it. And I do watch things because people are in it. But I don't know if I'm there with this cast. I think, Stephanie, you were kind of saying I'm surprised they haven't gone on to further things. I think it's because of the project, the network, and the location. The CW just
Doesn't turn out huge stars.
doesn't turn out a lot of huge stars, and they film in Canada most of the time, and you don't see a lot of translation unless they're big breakout people. So I have yet to see a big leap from a CW star, even if they're really, really good. Would you recommend Rain to others? Why or why not?
I have already recommended it to everyone.
I know.
All right.
It depends on the person. I think they would have to be interested in this type of show,
Yeah.
and then I would probably recommend it. But to the general public, I don't know if it would be their cup of tea. So.
Yeah. Agreed with your answer here, too, as well. And I would also caution, if you're not into soap operas, this is not going to be your historical fiction.
No.
If you're looking for history, don't watch this one. If you're looking for whatever you want with some really familiar people from history, then watch this one. I think it's fun. And it's not a waste of time.
No.
Agreed.
There was just a lot of questionable things by the end, and
Yeah.
so I left a little unsettled. And I just watched it. I probably shouldn't admit that, but I was catching up. Anything else you want to say about Rain that we haven't covered, whether because I asked you to think about it or because you were thinking about it yourself?
I think I'm good.
Well, if there's nothing else to say while looking back at Rain, I guess we'll look forward again. So what I'd like to do is thank Kristen, Gina, and Stephanie for joining me to talk about Rain, and because we look back at Rain in such a royal way, we're now going to roll the credits. Couch Potatoes Unite! Exclamation point was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kelsey Rezmer. Kelsey played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole kit and caboodle was engineered and produced by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. Give us stars, give us comments, give us reviews. Let us know how we're doing. Send us a message. We might just read it on the podcast. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what we should keep, what we should toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions on shows we might consider, contact us at our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, where we have a guest book, by email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, or via our social media, Facebook, Twitter at CPU Podcast, and Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite. Though, of course, we add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time. We always have several more new episodes coming down the pike. Just listen to our intros, and if you miss old episodes or want to know in general what we cover, just find us. We are everywhere and searchable wherever you look for things on the internet. You can search for us, or you can subscribe at our website, our channels, our social media accounts. Stay up on our new events and episodes. Until the next time, Rain is available to stream at our unofficial non-sponsored Netflix. I can't help they have these contracts. If you have nominations for shows we should cover on our podcast, looking back or otherwise, contact us via social media or our email. You can volunteer to be a panelist too. In the meantime, and until next time, until next episode, new episodes are published every Wednesday. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned.